Coming back to my subject, I say that the Most High, in his infinite foresight, well knew the iniquity of the dragon, and that in the pursuit of his wrath against the Church he would bring to disorder many of the faithful, striking down the stars of the heaven of the militant Church, namely the faithful, and thus seeking to rouse still more the divine justice and diminish the fruits of the redemption. The highest Lord, in immense kindness, resolved to meet this danger that threatened the world. In order that he might be moved in this by so much the greater equity, and for the greater glory of his name, he arranged that the most holy Mary should oblige him to give this help. She alone was worthy of the privileges, gifts, and prerogatives by which she was to overcome the world, and this most eminent lady alone was capable of such an enterprise as to draw toward her the heart of God by her holiness, purity, merits, and prayers. For the greater exaltation of the divine power, he wished it to be known through all the eternities that he had conquered Lucifer and all his followers through means of a mere creature and a woman, just as the devil had cast down the whole human race by another woman, and that there was none other to whom this salvation of the Church and whole world could be worthily credited. On account of these and other reasons apparent to us in faith, the Almighty gave into the hands of our victorious chieftainess the sword for cutting off the head of the infernal dragon, a power never to be diminished in her, and with which she defends and assists the militant Church according to the labours and necessities of coming centuries. While Lucifer with his infernal legions in visible forms persisted in his unhappy attempts, the most serene Mary never looked upon them nor paid any attention to them, although by the permission of God she heard the uproar. Since the hearing cannot be so easily stopped as the sight, she took precaution, lest what she heard should enter her imagination or interior faculties. Nor did she deign to speak to them otherwise than to command them to stop their blasphemies. And this command was so powerful that it forced the demons to press their mouths to the earth, while she, in the meanwhile, sang great canticles of praise and glory in honour of the Most High. This intercourse of her Majesty with God and her profession of the divine truths was likewise so oppressive and painful to them that they began to attack each other like ravenous wolves or like rabid dogs. Every action of the Empress Mary was for them a burning shaft, and every one of her words a flame of fire more dreadful than hell itself. This is not an exaggeration, for the dragon and his followers really strove to fly and escape from the presence of Most Holy Mary, while the Lord, in order to enhance the triumph of his mother and spouse, and confound entirely the pride of Lucifer, detained them by a secret force. His Majesty permitted and ordained that the demons themselves should humiliate themselves so far as to ask the heavenly Lady to command them to go and be driven from her presence, which they had sought. Accordingly she commanded them to return to the infernal regions. There they lay prostrate for a time, while the great vanquisher Mary remained absorbed in divine praise and thanksgiving. When by the permission of the Lord Lucifer rose from his defeat, he returned to the conflict, selecting for his instrument some of the neighbours of the holy spouses, and sowing among them and their wives the hellish seed of discord concerning temporal interests. For this purpose the demon took the shape of a woman known to them all, and telling them that they should not disagree among themselves, since the source of all their differences was none other than Mary, the wife of Joseph. The woman whose shape the demon took held the esteem and regard of all these persons, and therefore her words were so much the more weighty. Although the Lord did not allow the good name of his most holy mother to suffer in any important point, yet he permitted that for her greater glory and merit all these deceived persons should give her an opportunity of exercising her patience on this occasion. They betook themselves in a body to the house of Saint Joseph, and in his presence they called forth most holy Mary, and spoke very harshly to her, accusing her of disturbing their homes and their peace. This event was painful to the most innocent lady, on account of the worry occasioned to Saint Joseph, who had already noticed the increase of her virginal womb, and who, as she had perceived, was already troubled by the thoughts beginning to arise in his heart. Nevertheless, in her prudence and wisdom, she sought to meet this disturbance with humility, and overcome it by patience and lively faith. She did not defend herself, nor fall back on the faultlessness of her conduct. On the contrary, she humiliated herself, and begged her ill-informed neighbours to pardon her, if in anything she had offended them. With sweet and wise words she enlightened and pacified them, making them understand that none of them had committed any offence against the others. Satisfied by her explanations, and edified by the humility of her answer, they peacefully withdrew to their houses, while the demon fled, not being able to endure such great sanctity and heavenly wisdom. Saint Joseph remained somewhat pensive and sad, and he began to give way to conjecture, as I will relate in the following chapters. The demon, although he was ignorant of the chief cause of the troubled thoughts of Saint Joseph, wished to profit by the occasion, for he allows none to escape him, in order to disquiet him still more. But doubting whether his dissatisfaction did not arise from a certain disgust at his poverty and his lowly habitation, the demon hesitated between two different courses. On the one hand, he suggested a feeling of restlessness to Saint Joseph, irritating and disgusting him against his poverty, and on the other hand he tried to persuade him that Mary, his spouse, devoted too much time to her meditations and prayers, and led a too negligent and leisurely life, instead of exercising herself to improve their poor circumstances. But Saint Joseph, upright and magnanimous of heart, readily despised and rejected such considerations. The solicitude with which he was secretly filled in regard to the pregnancy of his spouse easily smothered all other anxieties. The Lord, leaving him in the beginning of these anxious thoughts, freed him from the temptations of the demon through the intercession of the Most Holy Mary. For she was very attentive to all that passed with the heart of her most faithful spouse. She therefore besought her most holy Son to relieve him of these assaults, and to be satisfied with the service which he rendered to God in enduring the sorrow of seeing her pregnant. The Most High ordained that the Princess of Heaven should still further prolong this great battle with Lucifer. He permitted him and all his legions, in one general assault, to strain all their forces and exert all their malice, so that the demons might find themselves entirely crushed and vanquished. The heavenly lady was to achieve the greatest triumph that ever was gained, or could be gained, over hell by a mere creature. These legions of wickedness arrived in all their hellish array to present themselves before the heavenly Queen, and with indescribable fury, uniting all the scheming plots of which they had until now availed themselves separately, and adding what little they could, they advanced to make a universal onslaught. But I will not detain myself in describing it specially, as nearly all can be understood from what has been described in the two preceding chapters. She met them all, and awaited their fearful onslaught with the same tranquillity, high-mindedness, and serenity, as if she had been in the position of the highest choirs of the angels, seated on their secure and unassailable thrones. No strange or improper emotion could disturb the serenity of her heavenly interior, although the menacing terrors, illusions, and falsehoods of all hell were poured forth in torrents by the dragon against this strong and unconquered woman, Most Holy Mary. While she thus, in the midst of this conflict, exercised heroic acts of all the virtues against her enemies, she was made aware of the adorable decree of the Most High, that she should humiliate and crush the pride of the dragon by her great dignity as Mother of God. Rising up in ardent and invincible valor, she turned towards the demons and spoke to them. "Who is like unto God, who dwells on high?" And repeating these words, she added, "Prince of darkness, author of sin and death, in the name of the Most High I command thee to become mute, and with thy legions to cast thyself into the infernal caverns, where thy place is appointed to thee, and whence thou shalt not come forth, until the promised Messiah shall vanquish thee and crush thee, or until he otherwise permit." The heavenly Empress shone forth in the light and splendor of heaven, and as the proud dragon made a pretense of resisting her command, she directed upon him the full force of her power. His resistance drew upon him so much the greater pain, humiliation, and torment, since such he thereby merited before all the other demons. Together they fell into the abyss and remained fixed in its lowest caverns, as had happened to them at the time of the Incarnation, and as I will describe further on at the temptation and at the death of Christ our Lord. And when this dragon afterwards engaged in his last battle with his queen, which is described in the third part of this history, this heavenly lady vanquished him so completely that through her and her most holy Son his head was entirely crushed. In that final battle his strength was so weakened and ruined that if human creatures do not deliver themselves into the hands of his malice, they can very easily resist and overcome him with a divine grace. Then the Lord himself appeared to his most holy Mother, and in reward of her glorious victories, he communicated to her new gifts and privileges. Her 1,000 guardian angels visibly presented themselves with innumerable hosts of others, and sang to her new canticles of praise in honor of the Most High and of herself. And with celestial concord of sweet and audible voices they sang of her, that which the Holy Church figuratively sings of the triumph of Judith. "Thou art all beautiful, Mary our Lady, and there is no stain of sin in thee. Thou art the glory of the heavenly Jerusalem, thou art the honor of the people of God. Thou art she who magnifiest his name, the advocate of sinners, who defendest them against their proud enemy. O Mary, thou art full of grace and of all perfection." The heavenly lady was filled with glad jubilee, praising the author of all good, and acknowledging him as the source of all she possessed. Whereupon she began to pay more particular attention to the well-being of her spouse, as I shall relate in the following chapter of the 4th book.